Welcome to the World Cup Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the country of France, Josh Lander, joined by my mate, also not in the States here, Dan Tracy in England. How are you tonight, Dan?
Yeah, very well, thank you. We're a lot closer in terms of mileage. We're not quite in the same country, but we're getting there.
Yeah, just a bit of a channel in between us. I am on the coast as well. Some nasty weather out here. But at any rate, we are here. Actually, France is in our slate of games here that we're going to talk about today. These will be sort of the second day's worth of matches here, 4 of them that we'll be talking about for you. We also already have up a bunch of games from Groups A and B, which were the first 4 matches that we saw here on the first day of the World Cup. Definitely want to make sure to like and subscribe to that page so you can continue to follow along as we are going to be picking these game lines now after being able to go through all of the groups as well. Make sure you check those out on thelines.com and our YouTube page there. Dan has some great written content up on thelines.com as well, so you can make sure to check out some of these game articles and use our great odds finder tool. Make sure that you are shopping those lines to the best of your ability. Some very interesting football lines, as they say, Dan, that we have available to us. A lot more opportunities to bet on games in an interesting way in these soccer or football matches than maybe some of these more American sports, due to the fact that there's obviously the propensity for draws to happen pretty consistently. So there's some fun ways to spice things up. The first game we're going to talk about here is Argentina and Saudi Arabia. Once again, a game where there's not going to there's a clear favorite in this one. There's what we call the 3-way line market, so either one team to win or a draw. So Argentina would be minus 600 to win. A draw would be plus 600, and then Saudi Arabia even less likely than a draw. Their win would be plus 1,400. There is the opportunity to make a bet where the opportunity for a draw would then be returned to you. So you would bet on a team, but if there is a draw in that situation, you get your money back. If you bet on that for Argentina, it's obviously much worse at minus 8,000. Saudi Arabia plus 1,000. I don't think that's really where we look at finding some value and some fun ways to bet this game, Dan. I mean, do you see any reason to bet on a game where you would bet, let's say you bet $1,000 and you get basically less than $500 back?
No, because something could always go wrong in the World Cup.
Yeah.
99 times out of 100, Argentina win this game. It only takes one time for them to draw, and you've just lost $1,000. So please don't make that bet, is the advice I'd make. However, there are always better bets to make in the World Cup and any other soccer tournament. So in terms of Argentina, as you say, they're heavily favourites to beat Saudi Arabia. They're going to want to get off to a perfect start, not just in the group, but to show their own tournament credentials in terms of winning it. Where's a good start? Winning both halves at plus 125. It's probably the best starting point in terms of value because of the way it's so slightly towards Argentina to start with. The rest of the markets aren't going to offer too much value anyway. So there's value there, but it's not going to be as big as the other kind of games which could be closer. So
sure.
It sounds a little bit skinny, but it sounds logical at the same time. If Argentina get an early goal, for example, it's almost game over. So as long as they're 1-0 up before the half-time whistle blows, they should coast to victory quite easily. So that's probably where I'd go. Also, you've got to factor in teams that attack a lot in a game such as Argentina, Saudi Arabia. Argentina are going to have a lot of chances. The more chances you have in the penalty area of the opposition, the more chances there is of a penalty being awarded. So it only takes one rash foul, for example, and then you've got an effort from 12 yards. So a slight novelty bet, but I'd also go for Argentina to score a penalty at plus 275.
Interesting. I don't hate that at all. So, I mean, the theory here is that Argentina is just pressing, and eventually they do get one. Obviously, I would say you could even, add to that the fact that Argentina does seem to have a number of mental lapses every single World Cup. In fact, the last time that they played in Africa, I believe that they had some issues as well with some mental mistakes and giving up a bunch of cards. So, I do think there's some opportunity for that as well. I love sort of some of the game theory, ideas here. I'm not necessarily saying, both teams to score is at plus 165. I don't love that, right? Obviously, you're not worried about the Argentinians putting up goals, and that's why I think at 3.5, I also like that because I'd rather just take that and the idea that this game ends at about 3-1 because I think you can count on the Argentinians scoring 2. 3 would be not even surprising, which means if you want to get this a bit more juice on everything, they could score 4, but there is the opportunity for Saudi Saudis to score at least one goal in this match. So I think a bunch of goals is a way to look at this as well, with both teams opening things up. And if we see an early one, like you said, we could see a slew of them after that. So let's move on to the next game here. We have Denmark and Tunisia, about 18 days from when we're recording this, Dan. And some of the lines here: Denmark money line would be minus 235, Tunisia plus 650. The draw is plus 340. And then if you want to take out the draw, or, obviously minus 800 for Denmark, and then Tunisia plus 450. So, I mean, the Danish are a team that, I think a lot of teams like to come out of this division, or this group rather, and think that they have the opportunity to do so. They probably are the second best team in this division. So, I think this is where they come out and make a pretty big statement as well against a team that I think they should see some success, and the ability to sort of keep the Tunisians out of their side of the field is something that I think they'll be able to pride themselves on, with their strong midfield and attacking midfield specifically.
Yeah, I mean, Denmark are going to want to cause France some headaches in Group B.
Exactly.
They're going to cause plenty of headaches for Tunisia, and the best way to do that, obviously, is by getting 3 points. And if they get 3 points, France will be sort of looking elsewhere and thinking, oh, hang on, we've got a bit of a test. But in terms of this game, the sports books aren't going to be sweating over you backing Denmark to win on its own. Again, it's a pretty one-sided fixture in terms of the odds. Again, there's always some value somewhere. This time I've gone for a Denmark clean sheet. So, let's say a 1-0, 2-0 win. You could go for a score as well, but let's just say a clean sheet. That's plus 110. I feel Tunisia haven't really got much in the way of firepower, if at all. And with Denmark being so solid at the back, that's before we get into their midfield and attack. They've got a very good platform that's always difficult to break down. Even the best European nations struggle to break down the Danes. They don't give away much. So I feel a clean sheet. Again, it's a little bit narrow, but it's that for a reason. I feel that's probably one of the more logical bets you can make from this episode. So clean sheet to win at plus 110 is a good starting point. Also, I'd be tempted to go for Denmark to win both halves at plus 125. Again, it could be a low scoring game. It could even be as low as 1-0, maybe 2-0. But as long as Denmark get that early goal, they will certainly batten down the hatches thereafter. Won't be boring football, but they are very pragmatic, and that's probably one of their key strengths, really. So I feel that if Denmark do their bit, and they do that bit early, or even just any time in the first 45 minutes, then half-time, full-time market will appeal to me as well.
So to clarify, you're saying that the leading at the half and winning the game would be sort of the parlay in this case, right?
Yeah, sorry, to make that a bit clearer. So let's say Denmark are 1-up at half-time. They've won the half-time market. If they finish the game 2-1 or any other score where they're winning, they also win the full-time market. Right. So as long as they've got some form of lead at 45 minutes and 90 minutes, that's the winning bet. So as I say, if they're going to the interval ahead, I can't see Tunisia getting a foot back into the game. So that's why I go half-time, full-time.
Which I like. And I wanted to clarify because I believe there's the opportunity to bet win each half in terms of score one more goal each half than the other team, which is obviously a much juicier bet in some ways. If you think they're going to win at least each half 1-0, or, they're basically saying -1 in each half, that's a much stingier bet. It gets you a lot more money. But this one is specifically if they score, are leading at halftime and win. Obviously, I think that's fair for the Danish. That is the recipe for success, as you say. That's why I do think they look to control the game in the attacking third, because they know that when on defense that they are somewhat impenetrable against a side that doesn't boast definitely a strong enough attack. So following you there, this is the next game here that we have on the slate: Mexico versus Poland, that we want to talk about, and probably the most fun game of the four that we have here to talk about for this day of matches. And so looking at the line here is definitely apropos of that. Plus 170 for Mexico on the money line, plus 165 for Poland on the money line. Really love the opportunity to bet on this one. A draw is plus 215, as they do think there is going to be a winner in this game, which I love. The sort of it's almost volatile, just the way that we're expecting something to happen, something contentious for sure. Two opposing forces in a lot of way, but both with some really good attackers. Mexico to draw and to win, draw no bet, -115. Poland -120. Forget that. Let's just go ahead and forget the draw bet. Let's just go ahead and talk about these two teams. One team scoring more goals than the other team. Let me know what you're thinking in terms of game theory here. The Polish might not be controlling the possession very much, but as far as the best striker in the game and potentially the world, he resides with Poland. So in Mr. Lewandowski. So what do you look at as the way that you see this match going in terms of how each team might be successful?
Well, as you say, if Poland don't get a lot of the ball, as long as they give it to Robin Lewandowski, they're going to be okay, aren't they? So he's always a goal threat. He needs half a chance, and he does the impossible things make possible. So it's going to be awkward for Mexico and how they deal with the threat of Lewandowski. It's also, more importantly, cutting off the supply line. If they cut off the supply line, then Mexico will find a foothold into the game. Mexico, you've probably seen more of them than me in the last few months, so I do apologise my standing isn't up to scratch as yours, but Mexico will be, they're always a handful out there in the World Cup. They've made a big surprise 4 years ago when they beat Germany in the group stages, so you never quite know what you're going to get. It's one of these fixtures where, personally, I wouldn't bet on the match outcome because it's so volatile. Yeah. Sometimes you fall into the trap of betting on every game. You don't have to bet on every game of the World Cup. I know we're kind of going through them, but sometimes there are games where it is so close to call. You feel sometimes, actually, I'm probably better keeping my money at least in the three-way market elsewhere. That's not to say there's no bets in this fixture at all. I mean, for me, maybe because I'm starting towards sort of the European knowledge, I'd go for Poland in the double chance. So that's to say they will either win or draw. Again, it's probably going to be a draw, but I'm just going to play it safe. So I feel that Poland to avoid defeat, that's being a double chance, at -225, it's a safe bet. But again, that might catch you out at the same time. So even that, I'm approaching with caution. However, one thing I'm not approaching with caution is Robert Lewandowski to score. He's probably going to be around +100 in terms of the anytime market.
Yeah.
If you want to find more value, back him to open the scoring. It'll probably be double or treble that. That's probably the way to really squeeze some value out of the goal scoring market. And it could be a cagey affair. So I'm going to go for under 2.5 goals, odds of roughly -160 at the moment.
That's fair. I mean, obviously, the counterpoint would be Mexico is going to be locked in on that man, and their defense is one of their, probably their strongest part of their rotation here, and it is something to watch out for. I mean, they still have Ochoa back there, who's very, very familiar with these situations. But like you said, look, I would predict closer to a 1-0 type of score. I think Mexico packs it in and has to just track Lewandowski all over the field. That's how they play the better teams, right? They definitely open it up more against the U.S. As you say, I have seen plenty of Mexico in the last year or so, last 18 months, really. But they're not going to play the same way that they play the U.S., who they're not scared of really nearly as much up top, right? They open things up and spread out a bit more against the U.S. I think in this one, it will be a bit more packed. And I want to predict 1-0 Poland and agree with you. And when we talked about this group, I said I prefer Mexico to come out of it as in second place. I think I would still stick with that. I love that, this is that 2 versus 3 type of matchup and we don't expect a draw. I love that. I really, really do. It almost makes me want to take a draw because if Lewandowski can't put one of those half chances away that you mentioned, then Mexico might just be, controlling this game at 60-40 with the possession and then holding the ball in their own third and not worrying about possessing it between their defenders and just making a boring match of things. I think they prefer that than anything else. So, I do like less goals scored in this one as maybe my preferred bet. But let's finish things off here with the reigning champions who don't look great. I don't want to say they're limping into this thing, but they don't look. There are some sort of vestiges of the way that they entered the World Cup in 2002 after winning it in '98 and some of the problems that they had in the next one, sort of following them into this one. So I would say, for this one, there's still a clear favorite in this game, similar to how we were talking about the Argentina and the Saudi game. France -475 on the money line, and the Australians at +1100. A draw at +550. That's, I don't know. Tell me why I would be crazy to bet on that. And is this a game where you think maybe France does get right? Or could you see some of this sort of, the sort of issues that arise with them chemistry-wise and personality-wise, maybe cropping up into this World Cup and rearing its head in the first game for them?
I know exactly what you mean, but I just feel that Australia aren't the right opposition to take advantage. So you cast your mind back to 2002, wasn't it, when France came as holders and Senegal shocked the world almost by beating France. The injuries are mounting up for the French. They've got the ego. They've got these kind of issues that always seem to be bubbling under the surface. But as I say, Australia just haven't got enough about them to really make France suffer. So you look at the win odds, even the draw odds, I just don't see why you'd back the draw. We like a World Cup shock. I don't see this being the one. Mm-hmm. I mean, even I guess the win is so skinny, you have to sort of look elsewhere in terms of what we're going to do. So in this one, I've used some other games and used the France win as well. So France, Argentina and Denmark all to win as a treble is plus 113 at the moment. Now, even that is
scary.
You might look at that. Yeah, exactly. You look at that and think, actually, I'm asking quite a lot and I'm not getting much in return. So I'm trying to find value. There's really not a lot there. So if you like a treble, that might be the way to go. But again, it only needs one draw to scupper that and you're ruined, really. So it's something to consider. But what I would probably look at instead is a France win, but both teams to score. Because when these two nations played each other 4 years ago in Russia, it was a 2-1 win to France. So, with these issues that France have got, they might be susceptible at the back.
Right.
It might just be, an off day. There might be a cold start to their defence of the tournament. So Australia might have some form of consolation, something to celebrate at least. But I don't see them landing a true knockout blow on the French, and that's why I've gone for a win for France and both teams to score at plus 225.
I can see it, definitely. Both teams to score plus 120. But I think at that point you might as well go with France to win and maybe over 2.5 goals or something to that effect and get a bit better than around the same 120. But there's some ways to get that up a bit as well. I think game theory wise, and maybe I'm just hoping this happens because I don't really much care for the French, and I know I'm in France, so I'm looking over my shoulder as I mentioned that I don't care for Les Bleus as a fan of the Belgian team, obviously. But what I would say, and like I said, maybe this is my heart talking here, is that the opportunity for Australia to pack it in, and we've seen this at least a couple times from them in a World Cup match that they're supposed to get blown out, and because of their their discipline in the defense, obviously they had guys like Cahill at the time, Tommy Cahill as well at the time, but the discipline in the defense and the ability to maybe just get a random one up top when the French aren't really prepared, and that's what you look for when you say that there might be some issues with the French team. When you start to talk about a breakdown in the chemistry, you're talking about mistakes that can lead to little goals here and there that are the stuff of youth league soccer because of the mistakes that could be made on the French when they just sort of get in their heads and bickering between each other and the like, right? So we'll see if it's that bad. I don't know for sure. There's not too much to be had. I often get scared of those 3-teamers, like you were saying, and betting some money lines that are around minus 500 and combining them to get to even money. And it's like, man, the likelihood of a draw in one of those matches it doesn't feel right. And that's what they want you to do, because if you parlay 2 of these games together, you're still looking at still getting 1 to 2 on your money in return, right? So you're not it's a poor bet at a 2-team parlay, but the 3-teamers where the wonky stuff starts happening. So either way, it's going to be a really fun first round of games here. We've now gone through 2 of these sort of opening or these days worth of games, so there's 8 total games we're talking about here at this point. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page so you can continue to check out all of these game lines and stuff that we're talking about as we get ready for the World Cup in just a few weeks. And until we see you next, happy betting.